welcome back to The Real World. Enter therealworld.com. That's two E's in real, like a film reel, because this is kind of a film website. Speaking of films, another word for films is movies, and this is There Will Be Movies, a podcast wherein we talk about 25 of our favourite movies from a given decade. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined by Ben Phillips. Ben, how are you right this moment?
I'm good. I've done a walk. We're ready to record.
Yeah, we've been recording two at a time lately. You'll probably be able to tell. Audio conditions or some weird shit. I don't know. So yeah, if you want to get the rundown on how we arrived at this list of 25 films, all the weird rules and caveats and conditions we put ourselves under and definitions, all of that's available on episode 0, entertherealworld.com or soundcloud.com/Mike and Matt. We don't want to explain them every time, but I will explain how you can find out about them every time, apparently. Episode 4, we are talking about Ocean's 11. So this is another pick from me. I don't even feel I need to defend this one. Like, I know it's not the most critically beloved movie ever, but it's just fun as hell, and it's this big, stupid collection of big-name actors who, you know, it's Ocean's 11, and, like, if they made this today, all 11 of them would be huge actors, and realistically about 5 or 6 of them might be, but yeah, it's just, like, a cool, stylish, slick thing, and we said how movies should be fun, and this has got fun just, like, oozing out of it. Start to finish, like, Steven Soderbergh, the director, said he wanted this to just be purely enjoyable and risk-free and just fun. And speaking of Steven Soderbergh, I'm not going to track this, but I'm going to predict that he is by far the busiest person in this decade that we're covering in this.
I mean, he is the busiest filmmaker in action. Like, even if you just list what he directed for movies, you're still, like, barely scratching the surface, because he's got, like, 4 seasons worth of television that he directed.
Yeah. In this decade alone, I think he's the director on 14 movies, not including a short film, not including a film he wrote but didn't direct, not including 21 different movies from that first set that he produced. He is also the uncredited cinematographer on 12 of these 13 movies he directed in this decade. So, the busiest man in the world. I don't know how many of these...
Do you want to know something insane?
Sure, go for it.
He got 2 Best Director nominations in the same year.
That shouldn't happen.
He got a Best Director nomination for Traffic and for Erin Brockovich.
Of course, neither of which were really in strong contention for this list. Neither were the sequels to this movie, neither was Shay, Solaris, The Girlfriend Experience. I've seen The Girlfriend Experience, it's a weird fucking movie.
I like the TV show.
Yeah, I heard that's better. And he's getting into weird, wonderful shit now. Like, he's making movies on iPhones and, like, making Black Mirror's Bandersnatch thing before they did it. Is it called Mosaic, that thing?
Mosaic, yeah. Logan Lucky's really good from this
Logan
decade.
Lucky is very good, I'll give him that.
Magic Mike, I think Magic Mike XXL is probably a bit more fun, but if you like your kind of, like, horny movies, then Magic Mike is
Magic Mike, its legacy will be that it's just hot dudes stripping, but Magic Mike is actually kind of good. Not amazing, but there's something about Magic Mike I kind of like.
I mean, like, the thing is, like, I say he did work in it. He did the cinematography for Magic Mike XXL.
Yeah, he makes everything look good, baby. Like, he knows what he's doing. As we have, you know, the one film per director rule. This is our Soderbergh one. I think we couldn't have covered this decade and not had a Soderbergh movie, and it's fucking not going to be Traffic.
It's just that kind of thing. Like, he credits himself as someone else for every single one of the movies when he does the cinematography.
Yeah, Andrew, I can't remember, or Peter.
And he edits Peter Andrews, and he edits most of his movies. He directed, edited, and cinematographed, and then 2 entire seasons of television.
Yep. When does he sleep, is my question.
The Nick is really good. Definitely watch The Nick.
Okay.
Soderbergh, good director, but also he makes me feel like an incredibly tiny man.
Who Among Us? Written by Ted Griffin, who did Terriers and The Shield and some bad movies.
Terriers fantastic.
Terriers is a show that you and Mike Thomas both want me to watch, and I'm probably never going to unless we do a podcast on it. So which of you can beat the other to the pitch of doing the podcast? I don't know.
Terriers is just one of those shows where, like, I genuinely think that at the end of this decade I will have it as, like, in my top 10 drama shows of the decade.
Wow. Obviously, it's not an original screenplay. It's a remake of a film of the same name from 1960, starring the Rat Pack and various others. It was released in December of 2001 in the US, February of 2002 in the UK.
March of 2002 in the UK.
Oh, okay, I had February. We are in a lover's tiff here. I'm sorry, but this means...
I've got 15th of March. on my
Does this mean
findings.
you're going to talk about 2002 in movies, or are we calling this 2001 and you're
No,
gonna
this is
not?
still 2001.
You covered that last week on Training Day. I don't know if there's anything extra you want to eke out of 2001.
I will touch on its opening weekend in the UK.
Sure.
If I spell Oceans correctly, because it's got an apostrophe in it.
Yeah, they are his 11, but he's one of them, so surely it's Ocean's 10.
Yes, it is.
Surely we should be taking one off all the numbers in this series.
I mean, you could
including
argue,
Ocean's 8.
You could argue that he's with Julia Roberts.
No, because she's the 12th in Ocean's 12.
Ocean's 11 opened number 2 at the UK box office with £7 million opening weekend. It opened behind Monsters Inc., which had $8 million in its second weekend. Another movie which came up a couple of times last week, Lord of the Rings, was number 3. Gosford Park number 4, Shallow Hal number 5. Man, remember when Shallow Hal was a thing?
Do you remember when Amy Schumer remade it with I Feel Pretty?
That is the UK box office that was Ocean's 11. I mean, the thing to remember is this is the biggest hit that we've covered so far.
By a long way. This
is the highest grossing movie of 2001.
It made $450 million, which is a lot more than Training Day, and we talked about how Memento and Almost Famous weren't even profitable. This, on an $85 million budget, which was kept lower than well north of 100 because all the big names agreed to do it for less than they could have been charging. But it made $450 million on an 85 budget, so, if we could consider marketing probably doubled the 85, it's still more than doubled its budget, I would say. Not a lot to be said about it, because, it's a remake of a film where the gimmick is, what if a bunch of famous people did some, sexy Las Vegas crimes?
But it's crazy that this is in the top 5 worldwide grossing movies for George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and Matt Damon, still to this day. They are 3 of the biggest movie stars in the world, and George Clooney has 1 movie that's grossed more than this. Brad Pitt has 3, 4 if you include Deadpool 2. And Matt Damon has 2, 3 if you include Interstellar. It is nuts. This movie is... it's not a monster in comparison to, it's not Avatar or Endgame or Titanic.
And this is 2000, 2001, where, I feel generally movies were making a little bit less than they are now. I feel almost everything makes hundreds of millions now. That might be just a misconception, and that I mostly truck in superhero movies and that kind of shit, but it's crazy that a film that came out in, 2001, 2002 could still be these guys' biggest film. And, Matt Damon's star was on the rise here. I know Brad Pitt and George Clooney were more well established, but Damon was still on the up. And I know he had the Good Will Hunting, had the Oscar stuff and everything, but I feel this is something that kind of made him a poster-worthy big star, in a way.
Yeah, obviously George Clooney doesn't really do big movies. A lot of his stuff is very much I will do a movie if I want to do it. He probably still gets, ER residuals and stuff like that. Brad Pitt, again, is another one who he does occasionally do the big budget things, but very much operates more in kind of Oscar-y things. But Matt Damon has the biggest, or one of the biggest action franchises as him as the lead.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. This movie is, I'm not going to say it's the little movie that could, but I'm just looking at this box office number and it's just it is so big.
If we include Thor Ragnarok as well as Interstellar for Matt Damon, what happens then?
Then this goes to number 5. Thor Ragnarok
still in the top 5.
Would indeed be Matt Damon's highest grossing movie worldwide.
Fantastic. I said there's not a lot to say in terms of development. Warner Bros. Had this kicking about to remake this for a while. Jon Favreau declined to write it. Brett Ratner was almost the director. Thank God we got him out of there. Soderbergh wanted to film it in black and white, which is fun. And they were like, alright, but you got to make it for half the money. And he was like, okay, never mind. Some fun casting rumours though. Mark Wahlberg, as I said last week, dropped out of this movie to be in Planet of the Apes, or he turned this down to be Planet of the Apes. He was considered for Linus, Matt Damon's character. Johnny Depp also considered for Linus. Luke and Owen Wilson were going to be the brothers, the drivers, the Malloys, I think. But they were committed to the Royal Tenenbaums, which also fucked them over because Danny Glover was going to be in it, and he dropped out for Royal Tenenbaums, or couldn't commit to it because of that. And Bill Murray was going to play a lounge singer in one of the casinos, but he was busy with the Royal Tenenbaums. So
wow.
Joel and Ethan Coen also almost got cast as these two brothers.
Wait, Joel and... What?
The Coen brothers, yes.
What?
I know. They were like, who's brothers? Who's real brothers? Who can we get?
But then they cast...
Not brothers, yeah.
They cast not brothers, but they cast
They cast an actor who has a well-known celebrity brother.
And one with a well-known celebrity father, yes.
Yeah, but they cast one with a well-known celebrity brother whose best friend is in the movie.
Yep, they sure did. Why wasn't it the Afflecks? I don't know either.
But, like, what was Ben Affleck doing at this point? Because obviously Casey Affleck is not a name at this point. Ben Affleck has his Oscar with Matt Damon.
Yep.
Or the first of his Oscars.
And that would have been another person to put on the poster, Ben Affleck.
It would be funny to have Matt Damon be the second build actor in this movie and then Ben Affleck be, like, post the jump. But I'm going to have to look to see what... Was he shooting Pearl Harbor?
There is a rumour to this day that Ben Affleck is somewhere in this movie because he was, like, seen on set visiting, because he's friends with all these fucking men. One of them's his fucking brother. So he was right there. Like, I'm sure maybe he wasn't available for, like, the weeks that it took to film it, but I don't know. This role for these two drivers, I'm sure they could have found a way. If only.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, like, this is not the most integral... Yeah, this is not the, like, most integral role in the entire movie, is the Scott Kahn role.
The Wilson brothers, the Coen brothers, or the Afflecks, and we got none of those. Some other bonkers people that were almost in this. Mike Myers, who the fuck knows who he was going to be? Maybe he was going to be Saul.
Oh, God, but, like, do him up in makeup.
Yeah, doing something mildly racially offensive. Bruce Willis, who later does feature in Ocean's 12. Ewan McGregor I think he was going to be Andy Garcia's character. Alan Arkin, probably Saul's character. Michael Douglas was going to be Andy Garcia's character. Ralph Fiennes was going to be Andy Garcia's character. All these people. Everyone who's famous. And we end up with, like, 5 very famous people and a couple of somewhat recognisable people, and then a bunch of nobodies. So, there you go.
So they made the sequel, or not the sequel, the spin-off last year with Ocean's 8.
Yes. I never saw that, and I kind of wish I had.
Ocean's 8 is fun. It's not Ocean's 11 fun, but it's still, like, it's not a bad time at the movies. I did not come out of it and go, like, that sucked.
Yeah.
But, like, you look at it and you go, like, oh, no, they did realise that all 8 of these characters need to be names, because it's...
Yeah, I kind of feel the proportion of fame to those 8 versus these 11, I think 8 actually has bigger stars in it, personally.
Yeah, it's Bullock, Blanchett, Hathaway, Mindy Kaling, Sarah Paulson, Awkwafina, and Rihanna, Helen Bonham Carter. Even if you say, like, Awkwafina and Mindy Kaling are, like...
less famous, but
less
still...
famous. But, like, they're both, like... Mindy Kaling is in Late Night at the moment. Awkwafina is going to be in, like, a very critically acclaimed movie, The Out in Cinemas very soon, which premiered at Sundance. Yep. She was a runaway hit in Crazy Rich Asians.
Which has a sequel presumably coming.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like, you look at it in that, and then, like, obviously you've got Rihanna, who is the second biggest singer in the world.
Yeah, let's say that.
It's basically her and Beyonce for female singers, really. Yeah. And then everyone else is, like, Oscar nominees, Oscar winners, people who front movies, and then Sarah Paulson, who is just the person who can do anything. It's a stellar cast, and, like, I'm not saying this movie doesn't have a stellar cast, but you get down further than, like...
It's top-heavy.
Yeah, you get down to Eddie Jemison, and you're like, oh, cool.
His first movie. A circus acrobat who returned to being a circus acrobat after briefly exploring being an actor, but doesn't speak English. And Scott Kahn. And pre-fame Casey Affleck. Let's get into it, though. Who is famous? George Clooney's famous. He is Danny Ocean. We open with him in his parole interview, where he is funny and charming and convincing enough to be released on parole. Immediately goes to Atlantic City, and he
doesn't leave the state, though.
He doesn't, because he's in New Jersey.
He's in New Jersey. Yeah. I did check that. I was like, has he left the state already?
No, it's very soon, though. Frank, who is a blackjack dealer or a card dealer at a casino, he directs him to Rusty, Brad Pitt, who is teaching celebrities, quote-unquote, poker. So immediately we have this Soderbergh trademark. He loves flipping between blues and yellows. Yellows mean public safe spaces, and blues and silvers and that kind of stuff is sort of a more nefarious thing. There are charts out there. You can see weird timelines of this movie, and it literally goes like blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow throughout, or some weird shit like that. A very pedantic man. I really like the line, she already left me once, I don't think she'd do it again just for kicks, when he's saying how, the only crime he's convicted of, because he's only alleged to have done these other things. It's all just a downward spiral after his wife left him and all this sort of stuff. I fucking love that these celebrities, they're all TV level actors, and not a one of them is more famous than the A-listers who are... But they had to do this. Like, I feel they had to get TV famous people to sort of make this scene play, because if you had more really famous film actors with George Clooney there, it'd look a bit strange.
I love that it's like when they walk out, everyone mobs Topher Grace.
Which has never happened. Ever.
Shall we run through who's here and, like, what they're from? John.
Sure, Joshua Jackson.
Star of Dawson's Creek.
Topher Grace.
Star of That 70s Show.
Shane West.
I believe at that point once again, although he would later go on to be an AER, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Barry Watson.
Star of Seventh Heaven.
And Holly Marie Coombs of Charmed,
Charmed. So, like, they're all kind of like what would be at this point like CW level. Like,
yes.
Are all these shows in the WB?
Probably. They'd probably all be Warner properties if they're, in this big Warner movie.
That 70 show was on Fox. But, like, again, like, nowadays, all these actors would be like...
But, I mean, this goddamn film contains a joke about Andy Garcia's talking about the owner of HBO or some shit in one scene, which is a joke for nobody.
I laugh.
Of course you did. Yeah, like, these dumb actors trying to learn poker, and Topher Grace is like, I got all reds or whatever. It's like, oh, good. Excellent stuff.
I like that they don't point out that that's not how poker works.
I will actually say one of the things that you texted me while you were watching it, like, God, this movie's so cool or whatever, and like, or so effortlessly cool. I think something that really, really works in its favour throughout is they don't really do a lot of exposition. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can figure out for yourself.
The only time they get close to exposition is when they walk through what is happening during the heist, which I feel like probably was the studio coming to them and say, like, I want you to have Andy Garcia down the telephone explaining what's happening for the audience to understand, because that's where it kind of gets like twisty-turny. Yeah. But yeah, like, there is very little exposition in the early part. The first half hour of this movie is basically just like, here are so many characters.
And I feel they treat you like a grown-up and they just let it play out and it works. And I think that really does contribute to the cool. And it's little things like, I mean, imagine you don't know the rule. I mean, not everyone does know everything about poker, but there are probably people that look at that and are like, oh, is that not good? But like, you can get it from Brad Pitt's face and like the way it's played and stuff. Like, they don't feel the need to have him deliver a line about that's nothing, Topher, or what, like, I think that's really cool.
So I do want to ask, so Brad Pitt tells them to like go all in and stuff like that to kind of like play up the hands and whatnot. Do you think that is him knowing that Clooney has something and is just trying to like get some money out of these kids, or
no,
do you
I think it's meant to be
Brad Pitt isn't reading him correctly?
Yeah, I think it's meant to be Danny is the leader, he's the smart one, he is, Rusty's great but Danny's better, that kind of, I don't know. I don't think he's in on it because this is the first time they've seen each other in a long time, and like there is that sort of tension about, he says, oh, I've just been in prison, and they're talking about this job that they did, and I think there is some sort of level of resentment still from Rusty. Like, he's not angry with him, but I don't think he's like over the moon or anything. So I read that as just, oh yeah, Danny's just a little bit better at poker than Rusty is. But there is certainly an argument because they do it later in the film. They stage a little tiff between them that was entirely planned ahead of time, or they just know each other so well that they were able to improvise it on the fly. I don't know.
Yeah, like, obviously, like, these two are two of the biggest stars on the planet.
Yep.
But they kind of feel like more at that point kind of tabloid stars. Like, they're not people drawing. Like, you look at George Clooney's like list of movies that he's done, and it's like he had Batman and Robin 4 years before this, like The Thin Red Line, which definitely isn't a big barnstormer of a movie. It's like Three Kings, Oh Brother Where Art Thou. They're all these like, little tiny indie things. It feels like he's still.
They are both very famous for being handsome. And
yeah, exactly. Like, Clooney is coasting off of ER, making him a movie star, but he's not a franchise person, and yet this is their franchise. And the same thing with Brad Pitt, where like obviously Brad Pitt has Seven and 12 Monkeys and Fight Club and stuff. He's also still at the same time showing up in Snatch as Irish Pikey. This is so bizarre that this is these two actors wielding their celebrity and their fame at their peak.
And like they're famous for being them. It's not the careers, it's just they're like memes. They are people, they're just huge celebrities, it's not like
but this is the only movie that I feel like actually manages to like drill down to that. Like, this is I mean, I'm not going to say this movie's meta. Like, I think the Ocean's 12 is more meta than this one is.
Oh, sorry, do you mean Julia Roberts playing Tess playing Julia Roberts?
Oh, this is such a fantastic scene. It's so good. Just the whole time where they're like talking about like,
you do look like her.
We need you to pretend to be this person, and then you get the like concierge at the hotel just going like, Julia Roberts is coming. It's wonderful. But like, yeah, this movie is so much about playing off your perception of who these celebrities are and playing off their just natural charisma. And it's what makes it so wonderful is that like, this is a really fun crime caper that kind of just propels you along. Like, it's 2 hours, but it's a breezy 2 hours.
Yeah, and it's pretty low stakes. Like, you assume they're going to get away with it. No one is ever, like, really at gunpoint or in serious danger. Like, it's just fun. It's just, like, we're going along on this little group of friends being friends and doing sexy crimes, you know? Yeah, and this is just full of, like, crowd-pleasing dialogue. Like, you know, when Danny, like, tells him his plan and, like, he's gonna hit these 3 casinos that share a single vault and all this, and, like, you get Brad Pitt being all, did you practice that speech? He's like, yeah, a little bit. Did I rush it? It felt rushed. Like, no, it was good. It's like, you know, it just feels like it's never taking itself seriously. And I think Soderbergh was the guy to do this because, in his own words, he says he just kind of sits back and lets people act. Like, he doesn't directly interfere with his actors too much once they're actually shooting. Like, he does a lot of advanced prep, but then once they're on scene, he's like, they're professionals, they know what they're fucking doing. And you get that sense here. In a lot of ways, this might be the most Soderbergh-y movie there is, and yet it's almost like this is the, like, mainstream one or whatever. But, like, you can tell everyone's relaxed and having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, and you get, like, little things where, like, there's the scene where they're looking at the massive blueprints of what the vault looks like, and they're discussing it, and then the security guard wants in, and for a split second, like, oh shit, have they been rumbled? And it's just like, no, they're just so charismatic, they've talked this security guard into letting them walk out with the blueprints.
Just gonna take these home, bring them back tomorrow if that's okay. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, putting it as a question, you know.
Yeah, it's just wonderful.
Yeah. So they go to Reuben, who is just a rich Jewish man, played by Elliot Gould, of course. Ross and Monica's father for younger people. So he's going to bankroll the operation, and the way they get him is they reveal that all these casinos are owned by Terry Benedict, who is his sort of business rival. I love the sort of dumbness of them, you know, them playing stupid, and it's like, there's a Terry Benedict casino. It's like, oh yeah, I guess they are. It's like, don't think I don't know what you're doing.
It's like, are we doing something?
I was like, oh, sorry. Oh. I love his little, when he's talking about the 3 most famous Las Vegas casino robberies of all time, that little montage of the 3 of those, I think that's really, really fun, and, like, take my breath away, playing as the guy gets shot and stuff like that. I think that's just a fun little, the most peril in the movie is these 3 failed robberies.
And it's also kind of brutal, because it's like, it's security guards for the casino, and they, like, full-on murder a man.
Yep, and they, you know, break that dude's face, and yeah. And, like, I was watching it last night, and I was like, wait, are they allowed to just kill him? I know he's robbing them, but can they shoot him to death?
Yeah, like, he is not a threat to human life or anything like that. He's just running out with money, like...
But then again, the police and people who are not threats to human life. Anyway, yeah.
That was last week.
Indeed. So, you know, they start putting their crew together once they have his funding, and Bernie Mac, by the way, the late great Bernie Mac playing Frank, he transfers to Vegas to be the sort of man on the inside. Rusty goes out and gets the Malloy brothers, Scott Caan and Casey Affleck, people with much more famous relatives, of course. They're their kind of drivers and just sort of bitch work, really. Like, they do a lot of, like, pretend bodyguards. And
they're great because they just keep cropping up. They don't have a definable role. They just do everything that no one else can do.
Like, you're thinking, like, oh, they're going to be getaway drivers, but really, they don't do that much driving. Like, there's no chase scene in this movie, really.
I do want to find out, because, like, obviously they do their big list of, like, all the kinds of people that they need.
A Boski, a Jim Brown, the biggest Ella Fitzgerald ever, yeah.
Yeah, and it's all, like, Ella Fitzgerald, like, she breaks glass, they need someone who does that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to ascribe each actor to, like, what they were supposed to be.
So Soderbergh made up all these terms. The Jim Brown is meant to be the sort of the fake racial interaction, so that's the Bernie Mac, Matt Damon thing.
Okay, so it's not like they're plays that they need to be doing on this rather than...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I believe they say 2 Jethros. That's the brothers.
It's all just kind of fun, and these 2 are fun. I like how often they play the same bit, which is just having an argument in a public space. And people...
All of it improvised, just those 2 just bickering. And
which is why it would have been so good if it was Affleck. Like Ben Affleck.
It still kind of works, though. They do have a chemistry, and like they are genuinely... Stuff like Matt Damon, like, just left in the van with them and being like, oh, fuck this, I'm out of here. Like, it worked.
I like, because like, the conversation jumps so many times that you don't know whether or not it's like a continuation continuous thing where, like, he's only been in there for 30 seconds, or whether or not he's been in there for, like, 15 minutes, because the conversation jumps around so often.
Yeah, and him, like, walking in just as they're coming out. It's like, did they steal this thing in literally a minute? Like,
these two are good. They're definitely, like, the least utilised of the kind of, like, the main 11, but they're probably also the most consistently funny.
You got Livingston Dell, played by Eddie Jemison, as I said, in his first ever movie, which is crazy that they cast him. He's been on some stuff on TV, but he's like their nerdy electronic man. Basher. So here's
Played by no one.
Here's Don Cheadle. Well, yes, an uncredited Don Cheadle. So the poster for this movie, they've taken the big five of Clooney, Pitt, Damon, Garcia, and Roberts, and they've arranged them alphabetically. And Don Cheadle wanted poster credit, which would have made him the first name build. So they didn't want to do that. So he was like, well, don't credit me at all then. So he is not in this movie. So there you go. He is doing a Hall of Fame bad accent.
But it's so good.
It's fucking awful. He went to London and researched this thing, and people were telling him it was good. He fired his agent, apparently, because she told him it was good, and then it turned out it wasn't. But I hope he's joking about that. You shouldn't fire people over things like that, but, you know.
It's wonderful. Just, like, the scene later on in the movie where he's trying to describe stuff, and he's doing, like, some terrible, fake Cockney rhyming slang.
Or in Barney Rubble. Trouble! Like, fuck off.
That's not how Cockney rhyming slang works.
Yeah, so he's there for blowing stuff up, I guess. The Amazing Yen, played by Shabo Quinn, who it was a legitimate circus performer and was noticed and was told to audition for this and does not speak English, and you can tell.
He has literally 4 film credits to his career.
Yep.
All of them are Ocean's movies.
Indeed. He's probably done pretty well out of these then. He's their grease man, their sort of acrobat. To be fair to him, he does one of the coolest things in the movie. Saul, played by Carl Reiner. I don't know how to really describe his role. He's like an actor. He's like a con man. He's good at pretending to be rich people, or is his real skill that he can fake a heart attack? I don't know.
I think it's like the accent man. Like, he can be vaguely Eastern European.
Yes. I like the pitch. A lot of these people, you just hear about them, but you don't see them trying to convince them and stuff. And, like, you know, you see Clooney, like, being unimpressed with Yen until he does the backflip and stuff. And, like, we got a grease man. But you actually see Rusty going to Saul, who's all like, you know, I saw you back here, and I know what you had for breakfast this morning, you know, all this sort of shit. You don't actually know what Rusty says to him, but that's, you know, part of the charm. But I do think it's interesting that this is the first one we get to see them actually attempting to recruit them. But probably because he's, like, a legend kind of thing.
It feels like, again, like a meta commentary on Carl Reiner, because, like, Carl Reiner is obviously, like, the writer creator of the Dick Van Dyke Show. Mm-hmm. He did The Jerk. He is a legend of comedy, and you kind of have him playing this kind of thing where it's like, it gives the movie an air of legitimacy to have this kind of, like, elder statesman kind of character come on.
Not Mike Myers.
Not Mike Myers. I just want to say, like, this is completely on a tangent, but Carl Reiner will be in Toy Story 4, which is about to come out when we're recording this, but his character is called Carl Rhinoceros.
Oh, that movie deserves to make $2 billion. They need one more.
I love the scene of them sat there in the bar, and, like, they both look so dejected, and they're just like, do we need one more? We need one more.
Well, you say they. Danny's talking to him fucking self. Brad Pitt is just staring off camera, and he's like, you think we need one more, don't you? Alright, we'll get one. And your final person is Linus, played by Matt Damon. And he's a pickpocket, and they don't really do anything with this at the moment. They're like, you know, you're Bobby Caldwell's kid, and Bobby Caldwell will feature in a future movie, but it's kind of in the same way that Saul is like a legend and you don't really know why. It's like, oh, he's like a legacy or whatever, and it's just like, you know, ostensibly they're just getting him because he's a good pickpocket. I mean, that is the main function he does, but, like, we see that Danny is kind of a good pickpocket as well, but it's like, he's there for more than that. He gets a through line, I would say, in this movie where a lot of people are kind of just playing versions of themselves with different names and just being cool. I feel he kind of gets his own little story, and the stuff with them at the bar and, like, him lifting something from under Clooney's hand and stuff like that. I think that's all really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because he is the last one. He's the last of the main actors to get introduced. It's about 30 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
At this point, he is big. He has been the title character in Saving Private Ryan. He's got his Oscar for Good Will Hunting, but it does feel early in his career. Like, he isn't born yet.
Yeah, he doesn't feel like a blockbuster, A-list, put him in a movie and people will come see it guy. He feels like someone who has, through his talent, found his way into big movies.
This feels like, I think I said to you, like, is this the movie that ordains
I think
Matt
so.
Damon?
And that feels meta because they're sort of grooming him to be another Danny, another Rusty type thing, you know? Like, that is his arc. That he he comes in as this rookie that everyone is kind of like mocking, and by the end of it, he has one of the bigger roles in it, and he's like side by side with Clooney towards the end and everything.
And it feels like in the next 2 movies, he has a bigger role.
Oh, gotcha.
But I don't know whether or not that is because, like, when he comes back, it's the same year that Bourne Supremacy comes out, is when Ocean Tours comes out, and then by the time Ocean 13, he is basically the second or third lead of this franchise and Bourne at the same time. That kind of interesting, like, meta commentary that this movie is so much of a kind of, like, I don't want to say it's like a pastiche of, like, film, but it definitely does feel in some ways that it's got a lot more to say about the film industry than you'd expect a bunch of scrappy con men doing a casino heist would have. And maybe that is because Ocean's 11 is based around the Rat Pack, and it's a movie that's kind of, like, got baked in Hollywood pedigree to it.
And, like, this archetype of, like, you know, the rookie, like, I feel they are filling these classic roles for this little Dirty Dozen, except it's 10, but 11, but whatever. Also, another Soderbergh trademark, he loves a fucking montage, and this one where they're recruiting everyone is a good one, and we'll get some more good ones with them, like, building the fake vault and everything. So Danny explains the extreme difficulty of what they're going to do for the first, because so far all we know is, we're going to knock off 3 casinos. We don't know how they're going to do it, and they don't actually say the plan right here. It's just, okay, here's the vault, there's a big tunnel with lasers, there's armed guards, there's constantly changing security passes. The other big thing here is they reveal how much money they're going after, and how, because by law these casinos must have enough to cover a bet, and it's a fight weekend, there's going to be at least $150 million in the vault. And it's a pretty good one. Like, this is where you would expect in other movies they would tell you how they're going to try and do it, which they never really do. We just see them doing it.
No, it's a wonderful thing of, like, this movie gives you information as and when you need it.
Yes.
But at no point do you feel lost in understanding what the goal is for a scene, really. Every single scene you get, like, even if they don't explain to you, like, what the ultimate outcome of it's going to be, very quickly you kind of get caught up onto, like, what they're hoping to achieve from, like, each individual step of the heist.
You know, and we get another montage here because they've all got to do recon work and figure out who's doing what and when and who the guards are and all this, and, you know, Bernie Mac eavesdropping on the other dealers and writing things in his crossword puzzle, which he didn't really need to do, but it's fun. Drivers with the balloons over the camera, and Livingston sort of slipping backstage with his stolen pass thanks to a stripper, and that fun little beat of him sweating. He's got the map written on his hand of the layout of the hallways so he can find his way out, and he's sweated it off because he's nervous, and you see Danny and Rusty watching him through CCTV, and it's like, oh is he going to get caught? No, he doesn't. Another Soderbergh trademark, he likes you viewing a person from, like, a third-person perspective, like through CCTV, through videos, you know, that kind of stuff. He loves that shit. And also, it's a really weird beat, but Bernie Mac kind of making that used car salesman feel just uncomfortable to make him give him a discount. It's like, he's not really pulling a race card. He's almost hitting on him, but he's not. And
does he crush his hand?
Yeah, and it's like, is he physically intimidating him? Because it feels like, they just frame it as if he's just, like, squeezing his hand so hard that he's, like, willing to, and he's, like, talking about his social agenda and, like, you know, lotions, and I don't know, it's a weird bit, but it's kind of funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, he gets the car at the end for cheaper.
He gets them 2 vans, which is important. So the bit where this all sort of kind of takes a turn, and where we sort of move into Act 2 of this movie that just feels like one long act, to be honest. So Linus is tasked with tailing Terry Benedict, who is played by Andy Garcia, the guy that runs these casinos, and he's learning his daily routine and all this. And again, another really good montage where you see everything he does in the casino on a daily basis and all this stuff. But this is where we learn the real thing going on here. Rusty, while getting briefed by Linus, you know, he's like, oh, here comes the girl, the best part of my day. But I don't know her name. It's like, her name is Tess, because this is Danny's ex-wife, and this now raises the question of, is Danny doing this to get back at the guy that is now dating his wife? You know, and like, yeah, yes, is the answer there.
Did Danny actually sign the papers?
I don't know, probably not.
Because he says he gets them on his last day, and obviously he comes up with his entire plan in, like, whatever the drive is. I'm just intrigued because she refers to him as ex, says, did you get the papers, but he keeps referring to her as wife. It's almost like he hasn't actually signed the papers consenting to...
Well, he says ex-wife at one point, but then towards the end she goes, that's my husband, so the implication is no.
It's just one of those things where, like, the movie never makes it clear whether or not they are actually, like, formally divorced. Obviously they're separated, and they haven't spoken in 4 or 5 years at this point, but it is interesting that, like, it's not clear whether or not it has been legally annulled.
Yeah, and you get this electric conversation between Clooney and Roberts, and I feel she is screwed over here. She does not have anywhere near enough to do, and she is sort of boiled down to a prize to be fought over, but...
Yeah, I mean, considering she is 4-time Academy Award nominee Julia Roberts. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress last year for working with Soderbergh in Erin Brockovich.
And I feel she's probably the biggest star in this movie.
I mean, coming off the 90s, she definitely is. I think she obviously like has a weaker 2000s, but that's just in general Hollywood being shit to actresses in their 40s.
Yeah.
Basically, like the Oceans movies, the only things you can write home about, and she's got that wonderful, wonderful scene in Oceans 12. But like, other than that, can you name me anything else from the like 2000s that she's absolutely stellar in? Considering the fact that in the 90s it's like Pretty Woman, The Enemy, Pelican Brief, My Best Friend's Wedding, Notting Hill, Runaway Bride. It's just hit after hit after hit that she's doing.
Yep, Julia Roberts is great.
Oh yeah, Julia Roberts is great. Julia Roberts does so much with what she gets here, and I can understand her just wanting to do this because it's fun.
Yeah, have you heard the anecdote about how she got cast here?
No, I've not.
So this rumour had gotten out that she was charging $20 million a picture at this stage of her career. George Clooney sent her a copy of the script with a handwritten note, and he'd stapled a $20 bill to it, and he said, I heard you don't do movies for less than 20 these days. And then she signed on, so there you go.
I love the movies because, like, she has the "and" credit in this movie, but it's not a traditional "and" credit.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is both after the, like, fold, where you start getting the names, like, the top billed guys, production company, and then it's, like, Casey Affleck, blah, blah, blah. She gets an introducing credit for this movie. Like, Oscar winner Julia Roberts.
I assume that was meant to just be, like, a little rib on her, to be honest.
I'm sure it is, but it's a wonderful, wonderful little rib.
And maybe it's a meta thing of them realising in the final edit that, like, oh, she's not in this that much and she doesn't do anything. But she had fun.
She had fun. I'm sure they all had fun, and she is good what she's given.
Yes, this little conversation with Danny where they're, like, just trading barbs and stuff is really good.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a movie that is juggling 13 characters whilst also doing some, like, quite complicated kind of, like, heist manoeuvring around. I mean, like, even when you look at movies like Avengers, like, they mostly settle down to, like, we have 7 or 8 characters we have to function with. This movie is adding, like, another 5 or 6 to the top of that.
And, you know, you get the stuff with Benedict. They do some really shorthand stuff to make you not like him immediately, of, like, so she's, like, an art curator in this museum in the casino, or above the casino, or whatever. She asks him if he likes a painting, and he just goes, I love that you love it, or I like that you like it. And it's just so very quick. And Danny immediately, you know, he's clearly not an expert in art, but that he's able to joke about it, about Monet and Manet and all this sort of stuff. It's like an immediate this versus this thing of, like, even if Danny isn't an expert, he has opinions and stuff. Whereas...
I did enjoy that, like, they also drew paintings. Well, they also painted.
They found the time to paint from time to time as well. And just the dick measuring between Danny and Terry and stuff, and him knowing about him immediately, that sort of all-knowing, omnipotent casino villain thing. But yeah, and also he won't kiss her in front of the cameras and stuff. You know, just all this stuff that just makes you immediately dislike this dude and just want these two to get back together. Crazy to me, this is the first time they had ever met, was doing this movie. So that's crazy. As in Clooney and Roberts. Because you just associate them, probably just because of this, but, like, they seem like they're in a little group together, as do a lot of this big cast.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, is, like, this is the first time that all these actors got to work together, but they kind of become synonymous with each other.
Yeah. So there's, like, it's a bit weird, like, I've seen this movie a bunch of times, and I still could not tell you why that demolition creates problems for them. Like, I don't know what Bash's original plan was, but
basically, they blew up the building, but in the process of blowing up the building, they did something to the electricity of the city that he was going to exploit to cause the power outage.
Sure.
But by doing the explosion, they triggered the thing that he was going to trigger himself because it's a flaw with the system.
Yeah.
But they did it by accident, so they have to go in and fix the problem. So he has to, like, I don't understand what the actual, like, mechanics of it are.
Yeah,
it makes sense in terms of, like, oh, this is a thing that's shit about the way that Nevada's electric board put the power in, that accidentally gets tripped because. Yeah. And again, like, it's nice that, like, all this stuff is, like, seeded earlier on in the movie, because, like, the casino they blow up is Ruben's casino that he lost to Terry Benedict. Like, it all works really nicely.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there was some weird stuff around the time this came out with, like, because it wasn't long after 9/11, and I don't know, something happened, I don't really know, but
I do really enjoy the shot of Don Cheadle sat there watching it on the TV screen,
and it's happening behind him,
and it's happening behind him, and you see the building. Like, it's not all of it, but you see just, like, the tops of this building go down, and you're like...
Yeah. What it does mean is they have to go and steal what he calls a pinch, which is basically an EMP, and this is the most exposition-y they really get, is explaining the weird technical thing of, like... I feel these days you could just say an EMP and people would probably just know what it means, because this has been in so many fucking action movies at this point. But yeah, they're off to a fancy made-up university to steal this thing that will create a massive blackout to allow them to do this robbery, and during it, Linus is almost caught, and Yen breaks his hand. Before that, you do see Yen perform. They've built this replica vault so they can practice, and you see him perfectly execute the backflip and everything as a bit of foreshadowing. It's very cool. And, you know, you said earlier, like, how long is this? But it is a really funny beat of Linus, like, walking in the door just as they're coming out, and then they're having to watch him through the windows as he's running around and the security and all that. But it's a weird little aside for the movie, but it's fun because of the brothers. And, like...
Basically, like, all it does is to function is to say, like, should they trust Linus because he's a bit of a hothead?
And Yen has a broken hand.
Yen has a broken hand. But then, like, the fact that, like, he smashes a window open and then jumps off the roof.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that causes to kind of, like, go, like, hey, someone's stolen an EMP. It only functions as far as, like, the two character-based moments, not in terms of, like, a plot moment. No one is on the lookout for the white van that stole, presumably, quite a heavy-duty weapon that can short out an entire city.
Apparently, in real life, one of these things would struggle to knock out the power in a room, let alone the whole of a city. And, like, the only thing that could do that is a nuke. But whatever, movies. So this is where we get the kind of staged blow-up between Rusty and Danny, because Danny is red flagged by the casino. If he is seen, he will be escorted out, and he has to play quite a big role in the heist, so he's sort of fucked it for them. And this is all because of that little dick measuring contest with Benedict and all that. And this does mean that Linus has to take a bigger role, and I really like Rusty's giving him all that conflicting advice, like, don't look up, don't look down, make him laugh but don't be funny, or no, be funny but don't make him laugh, make him like you but then forget you, and then now whatever you do, don't, and then he gets called away. Like, it's cliche bullshit, but it's funny, and seeing it done by these two, and, like, again, this meta thing of, like, he is like the next generation, or like half a generation after Brad Pitt, so, like, he does look like a child here being told what to do by someone much older than him, and it just, I think it all works really well.
We also get, like, the stuff like Rusty eating food.
I feel this is the most pervasive piece of movie trivia in modern movies, that, like, Rusty's always eating in every scene because he's too busy to sit down and have meals and all this shit.
These people would be busy.
Yeah,
so
that's true. The plan sort of starts a few days early, because basically Saul is posing as, like, as an important Russian...
generic, like, Eastern Bloc.
Yes.
Criminal mastermind.
Yeah, so Benedict agrees to store this briefcase for him in the vault. He agrees to it a few days ahead of time, but then on the day that they're doing this, you know, it's fight night, it's Lennox Lewis against Vladimir Klitschko, all this shit. Linus poses as a member of the Nevada Gaming Commission, and he distracts Benedict by bringing these claims against Frank. Yen is loaded into a little trolley and taken down with the briefcase and all this shit. They're almost rumbled by a man who recognizes Saul as Saul. This man is named Bucky Buchanan, so Ben and Matt's Marvelous Journey, I guess, on IntoTheRealWorld.com. I really love Matt Damon being just the whitest man in the world and being terrified of Bernie Mac. Like, the one I really think of is when he lunges and he goes, "Oh dear God," and, like, it's all just really, really good stuff, and Damon plays it so well, and Bernie Mac is, like, improvising a lot of these, like, insults and, like...
It's just him muttering under his breath, and it's just it is just funny. Calling him Cracker, and, like, he turns out and goes, like, the Nevada Gaming Commission would never like, do this for someone, and it's like, is this a meta commentary on, like, the Nevada Gaming Commission actually being racist?
Probably.
Like,
it's just a fun little beat, and he, of course, then pickpockets the card, and they use that. And meanwhile, Danny is, like, loitering in the lobby kind of thing, or, like, hanging out by the slots, and he is taken into a room by these huge men, and an even bigger man shows up to ostensibly beat him up. But then it turns out this guy's on his payroll, and Danny escapes through the ceiling and everything. It's like a fun little beat, and it's this trope of the guy that looks huge and intimidating is actually, like, a nice, lovable idiot, and, oh, my wife's pregnant again, and all that sort of stuff. And I just really like the idea of this guy making fake fight noises for, like, what, half an hour? I don't know.
I like, yeah, like, he makes the fake fight noises, and then they walk in, and he's not even, like, that badly beaten up. Like, there's a little bit of blood, he's a little bit dishevelled, and it's like, you've been, like, throwing him around this room.
Meanwhile, Saul is, like, faking a heart attack, which lets living Kingston loop the security footage or change. We don't know exactly what's going on at the moment, but he makes Linus disappear and it goes to pre-taped stuff. So Linus heads down.
So Saul is eating some pills. Is that to help him fake the?
I wondered this, if he's taking something to taking too much of a medication or something that makes him have a mild thing.
Or, because he mentions he's got ulcers. So I'm sat there going, is he doing something that's going to affect his stomach acid that would cause him to be visibly uncomfortable?
And maybe he has ulcers because he's done this a lot or something. I don't know.
Maybe he is. Maybe he's doing something. But obviously, he is doing something that he's not faking the amount of sweat that he has drenched in by the end of the scene. But he is eating something. I'm sure there is something to do with what he's actually doing there. But I get what the end point is, but not necessarily what mechanics they are using to take us to the end point.
Sure. And Rusty shows up as a doctor and pronounces him dead and does some wonderfully hammy over taking off the glasses and going, this man is dead, or it's all just really good. Linus figures out that little argument was staged, and he's shocked to see Danny in the vents as they head towards the elevator shaft and all that stuff. I love that the drivers are used in their third different role in the same night, all in front of CCTV. They've been chefs, they've been bodyguards, and then they're the hotel security all in one. It's I know they're kind of nondescript, but this feels the most dangerous part of it. But I guess
the thing is, Pitt does it as well, where Pitt is playing multiple characters. He is openly walking the casino floor in a few scenes time, whilst also being walking in there and being a doctor in front of them.
Yeah, and then we move into the end game, as it were, with the scene they showed in a lot of the trailers is Damon and Clooney descending down this elevator shaft on these weird little high tension cables. So Basher sets off his pinch, which knocks out all the security, and they get 30 seconds to get down this elevator shaft. And it's this is the biggest stunt in the movie probably, and it's not even actually that crazy, but it's the closest thing they had to a big sexy stunt and all that.
And the thing is, it's completely overshadowed by a movie that did a very similar thing about 3 years before this.
Yeah, this is true. And they knock out the guards, and Yen emerges from his little trolley, and they have the very brief moment of suspense because the briefcase is on top of the trolley and it isn't normally, and there's floor sensors. And I like that the fake jewels that Saul is having stored are actually part of the bomb mechanism or whatever, and he's done his flip successfully, and they plant the charges, but then his cast is caught in the door, and he almost dies, but there's no batteries in the remote. It's all just dumb but kind of funny, and
this is a great one use of the F word you get in in the PG-13 or whatever. When where the fuck were you guys?
Where the fuck you been? Yeah,
is wonderful and a lot better than some other movies do nowadays with their carefully deployed one F word.
If you touch her, I will fucking kill you. Oh Jesus! So Rusty at this point calls Tess on a phone that Danny slipped into her coat, and I'm sorry, but this movie has not aged more than the line "I don't have a cell phone" that Tess says. It's fuck you, don't you? And it's got the little pull-out antenna and everything. Yeah, so he calls her to speak to Benedict.
Those things weigh a lot, and he puts it in her pocket.
And she takes the coat off because he says get your coat, and even if you don't feel it while you're wearing it, you'd feel it when you lifted your coat up, but whatever.
And they're pickpockets, I'm sure, there's the whole thing with pickpockets, they can lift something from you and you don't feel the changing weight, which seems insane to me, because I know that pickpockets go around stealing wallets and stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure I'd be well aware of
I'm consciously aware there are things in my pockets, so Rusty basically alerts him to the fact, hey, you're being robbed, and they restore the live footage, and he basically demands, right, if you escort half this money out for us and put it in this van that has a camera and everything, you can keep the other half, but we have placed explosives on both sets of money, and if you in any way try and stop this, we will blow up both. And that great line of you can lose 80 million privately or 160 publicly, and then just going straight into talking to Tess, who's figured out what's going on and all this shit, and it's oh, okay, this is their plan. That's pretty clever. And, you've got the little camera in the back of the van, and it's all, it seems really cool. And it's this whole thing of them not actually telling you what the plan is until you see it. And it's oh, okay, here we go. And then that turns out to not at all be the plan. I think it's just really clever, and it's this is your first version of the plan or whatever. Because, the SWAT team arrive, and they retake the vault, and it's oh no, they've blown half the money. And then when you get to the van, turns out that's been remotely operated, which is a nice little callback to when we met these brothers, it was a race between a real monster truck and a remote-controlled one. So Casey Affleck has been remote-controlling the van, and there is no money in this van. It's all just flyers for hookers, which they blow up. And then you get the big reveal, which is just so fucking cool. I don't know, on some level, maybe you can see this twist coming, but I've
seen the movie before. I pegged that it was Brad Pitt's voice.
Yes.
As the head SWAT guy.
Yes.
About, like, just after, like, Matt Damon says, like, I'm sure I could have earlier, but, like, the moment Matt Damon does his line of saying, like, they're shooting or whatever he says as in that scene, and then, like, they go back to the SWAT guy, I was like, oh, no, that's Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt doing an accent.
They almost would have been better off just having completely different people do the voices and just claiming it was those two doing voices, because, you do definitely recognise those voices when you hear them. But they intercepted the 911 call. Everyone who's already finished their part is one of the SWAT officers. They use the fake vault they built for practice. They use that to video themselves robbing them, and that is the video that was shown, and they are actually just the SWAT officers, and they just march all the money out in their equipment bags, and they get away with it, and they just walk and stand by a fountain, and Claire de Lune plays, and it's just really nice, and it's a clever little heist. And
we do get the bit that annoys me is that as they walk out, they do lift the masks, so you can see the faces for the reveal. It's like, you're still in the fucking casino. Maybe they wouldn't get a shot of your face, but some of you have been pretty openly walking around the casino.
That whole shot is like a direct nod to the original film, which they tried to generally get away from, but there's a scene where they're like walking down the street and it's meant to like directly mirror that. But you get the whole thing with Terry is caught on camera saying that he would trade the money for Tess or whatever, and then she leaves him and runs to Danny and all this stuff, and it's like, I guess. I mean, that is a lot of money, and I don't know how long these two are supposed to have been together, but then on the other hand, this man is very, very, very rich, and while he's annoyed he's lost this money, I don't think it will actually hurt him that much, and we see in later movies it doesn't, because he's still rich. So it's more just the notion. And you get the idea that, like, he would trade, like, $1,000 for Tess just because someone robbed him and he won't have that. That's what they're going for there, rather than, like, oh, this woman is worth more than any amount of money. It's like, no, I think it's more just that is his outlook. It's that he's been embarrassed and he doesn't want that, and that's more important to him. Winning is more important than Tess. There you go. I found a way. Yeah, and then you just get this nice, happy ending with, like, Rusty and Tess waiting for him when he gets out of prison, and I like that they do the 3 to 6 month later title card there after he says, I'll be out in about 3 to 6 months. And it's got this weird ending where, like, they're sort of being tailed as they leave, and this odd sounding song that doesn't fit the rest of the soundtrack plays, and it's just like, okay, well, I had fun.
I mean, I think that the soundtrack is...
Oh, the soundtrack's so good.
I think some of it's really good, but I also think some of it's kind of, like, weirdly, like, not in the tone with the movie. Like, or the score is, at least. Like, there's bits of the score I'm just like, going like, this feels very, like, 2001 score-y kind of thing.
Are you talking about stuff like when you're in Chicago with Linus, and, like, there's this weird, like, I don't know, like, the music feels out of place? Like, I think all the stuff with, like, the upright basses and the jazz and all that is really, really good. It's just, there's weird little bits there that do feel very old movie.
It is odd, like, and I mean, apparently, like, David Holmes did the music for the score. He's an electronic musician and composer. I feel like when the score kind of goes like a bit more electronic, it kind of feels a bit out of place. It's kind of that kind of like late 90s where the electronic music didn't sound particularly good.
No,
but no, it's all very good. The last ending shot is weird. You get the scene where, like, Rusty throws the burger out because he's got heartburn.
Yes.
You get Julia Roberts being sat at the back of the car looking like a goddamn movie star, which is wonderful. And then, like, we're maybe almost setting off a sequel. But I mean, Andy Garcia is in all 3 Oceans movies, isn't he?
Yep.
But he doesn't circle back into being like a key part of the plot until the 3rd one, or am I misremembering the second movie?
My memory of 12 is not great, but I think he actually helped get them caught, kind of thing. Right. I think that Vincent Cassel is, like, working for him. Is it Vincent Cassel? I think it's Vincent Cassel.
Vincent Cassel is, yes.
Yeah, I think he's, like, in some way in league with him, and he's, like, got his revenge or whatever, and then in 13 he's helping them take down Al Pacino, and it's like, okay, sure.
There are 13 actors who are in all 3 of these movies.
Yeah.
Topher Grace almost makes it 14, but sadly he is not in Ocean's 13.
There you go. You know, it's not the most high art piece of cinema ever made, but it's just it's really fun. It's light, it's fun, it's an easy watch. It's very well executed. Soderbergh makes it very visually cool. These actors make it fun to go along with them, even on some of the beats that are generic or cliche or whatever. And it's just, you're just having a good time hanging out with your famous pals, you know? And it is a thing unto itself. There are movies that have more famous people in them, but like this, I feel its legacy is like they just got a lot of very famous people and they had fun, and it's a sexy casino heist, and it's like, I wish there were more heist movies.
Yeah, this is like a really good fun heist movie. I mean, I'm just trying to think, like, is there another time that these... Burn After Reading is the only time I feel like outside of this that you get like a Clooney Pitt movie.
That's the only other one with them both in it. Yeah, I think Pitt and Roberts were in The Mexican. Were they both in that? They were both in a movie straight after this, and they were both, I think, in Clooney's first film he directed, which I forget.
Yes, Julia Roberts and Brad Pitt were both in The Mexican. Isn't that the one which is like they don't actually have any scenes together?
Yes, I think that might be the case, or very few at least.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it's two of the biggest movie stars in the world, and yet they've got like so little screen time together.
Yeah. A bunch of these people would collaborate again. A lot of them would be in Soderbergh movies again in the future. Yeah.
I mean, he makes a few of them. It's kind of quite easy for him to have actors be in his movies.
Yes, this is true. This cemented the public friendship of a lot of these actors and like the trope of them all collaborating again. Even if they're not actually in as many movies as you think they are outside of Oceans, it feels like an ongoing thing of like, if you see any combination of these guys together again, you're like, fun, like in Oceans, you know. And it's like that's what this did, and it's like an easy sort of lowbrow thing, but done incredibly well. And I think that's a lesson that can be learned. And like, you know, you don't have to come up with the most artsy, over the top, complicated plot in the world. You can just take something very simple and just do it incredibly well, and it will work.
Yeah, I think kind of the point is like, we chose to do this movie instead of doing Traffic or Erin Brockovich.
Yeah.
But like Soderbergh won his Oscar for Traffic, and we've gone with like, no, let's do the fun, breezy movie of the year afterwards. Like, there are other directors where we could have gone for like the breezy, fun take, but we've gone for like the kind of like more dramatic side of their career and stuff like that. But like this one felt like, this one feels very emblematic of where Hollywood was in 2001. It's, as we said before, like effortlessly rewatchable. It's so breezy, so quick, so clever,
stylish,
and stylish. Yeah, it's just good fun. This is not one of my like 10 favourite movies of the decade, but it is one that like, if it's on TV, I'll go like, you know what, I'm going to sit and watch.
Yeah, and like when we were putting our versions of the list together, it's certainly not something, and we're not ranking them. I wouldn't put it top 5, I probably wouldn't put it top 10, but I was like, I can't not talk about this if we're talking about the 2000s, because it's just such a memorable juggernaut for me particularly. Like, I remember the commercials coming out for this and I'm like, look at all these famous people. It's a movie, one of the first DVDs I owned, and I've just seen this so many fucking times, and it's just, I couldn't not talk about it.
Yeah, there are a lot of movies we've got coming up which are obviously like the most acclaimed.
Yes, I feel through our first 4 there's been a lot of like, well, this isn't the best movie ever, but I like it, and we do have some more like obvious bangers coming up, including next week. It's going to be the Royal Tenenbaums. Go to entertherealworld.com, go to Mike and Matt on SoundCloud, listen to all the good stuff we've got going on there, and we will see you next time. I don't know if you've been able to find out in all of your research, will there be movies?
There might be some movies.
There might be some movies. It's a catchy name for a podcast. There might be some movies. We'll see you next week, everyone. Goodbye.